Imagine standing at the edge of a vast desert, desperately thirsty. In the distance you see water gleaming under the sun. You run toward it, heart pounding with hope. But when you get there, your hands grab nothing but hot sand. It was only a mirage. Despite the disappointment, you convince yourself that the next shimmer will be real, so you keep running deeper into the desert, further from salvation. This is what pride does to us. It's a mirage, a false promise of satisfaction. Pride whispers, you don't need anyone else. You don't need God. You can find fulfillment in yourself. Yet every time we reach for it, pride leaves us emptier and more parched than before. Today we will explore how pride blocks our connection with God, others, and even ourselves. We will uncover 5 ways pride operates in our lives and how humility can set us free. Along the way, I will share stories to help us see the subtlety and danger of pride and the profound hope that humility offers. In a small village, there was a wealthy merchant known for his grandeur. He wore fine clothing, lived in a mansion, and hosted lavish parties. Yet inside his home, the walls were cracked, the roof leaked, and the foundation was sinking. When visitors arrived, he would lead them only into the rooms he had polished and painted, hiding the rest. He spent all his money maintaining appearances, leaving nothing to fix the structural damage. One night, a storm came, and his house collapsed, revealing the truth he had hidden for so long. Pride works like the merchant's obsession with appearances. It convinces us to hide our flaws and focus on outward success. We spend our energy trying to look good, rather than addressing the cracks in our hearts. But God doesn't look at the surface. As it says in the book of 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7, man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. If we allow pride to dictate our lives, we'll end up like that merchant, exhausted by pretense, yet crumbling inside. Humility begins when we drop the facade and let God repair the foundation of our hearts. 2 farmers shared a plot of land divided by a fence. One grew wheat and the other planted corn. One year the rains came late, and the crops struggled to grow. The wheat farmer began to accuse the corn farmer of stealing water from the shared well. The corn farmer, in turn, accused the wheat farmer of overusing the soil. Their argument turned into a feud. They stopped tending their fields, each more focused on the other's faults than their own work. By harvest time, both fields were barren. Pride creates division. It makes us see others as competitors rather than companions. It thrives on comparison, turning us against one another. Whether it's in our families, workplaces, or churches, pride whispers, "You deserve better, you're right, and they're wrong." Yet Jesus calls us to a higher way. In the book of Mark, chapter 12, verse 31, he commands us to love your neighbor as yourself. Humility reminds us that we are all equally in need of grace. It opens the door to forgiveness, understanding, and reconciliation. Pride divides, humility unites. There was a sailor stranded at sea. His ship had been wrecked in a storm, and he clung to a piece of debris for days. One morning he saw a rescue ship approaching. Instead of signaling for help, he thought, "I can manage on my own. If I let them rescue me, I'll look weak." The ship passed by, and the sailor drifted further into the ocean, his pride sealing his fate. This is what pride does. It convinces us we can save ourselves. It blinds us to our dependence on God, making us think we can handle life on our own. But in the book of John, chapter 15, verse 5, Jesus says, "Apart from me, you can do nothing." Pride tells us we're self-sufficient, but humility reminds us that we are branches connected to the true vine. Without him, we wither. True hope begins when we admit our need for God and allow him to rescue us. In a kingdom long ago, 2 knights were tasked with defending their land from invaders. One was skilled with a sword, and the other was a master archer. Instead of working together, they began to compete, each trying to prove who was the better warrior. When the enemy finally arrived, their pride had blinded them to the real battle. The kingdom fell, and their rivalry cost them everything. Pride is inherently competitive. It isn't satisfied with having enough. It must have more. Lewis writes, "Pride gets no pleasure out of having something, only out of having more of it than the next man." This constant comparison drains us, robbing us of joy and gratitude. Christian hope reminds us that our worth is not found in outshining others, but in being deeply loved by God. When we let go of competition, we find peace. The king invited his subjects to a grand feast. The poor came eagerly, grateful for the invitation, but one nobleman stood outside the gates. "Why should I eat with peasants?" he thought. "I deserve a table of my own." He waited, refusing to enter until the king offered him special treatment. The gates eventually closed and the nobleman was left in the cold, his pride keeping him from the feast. God's grace is a feast freely offered to all, but pride keeps us from accepting it. It tells us, "You don't need grace. You've earned your place." Yet in the book of James chapter 4 verse 6 it says, "God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble." Humility opens our hearts to receive the gift of grace. It allows us to approach God not with entitlement, but with gratitude and surrender. The feast is prepared. Will we let pride keep us from the table? A young artist painted a masterpiece and brought it to the town square. People gathered around, offering compliments and praise. The artist, proud of his work, began to criticize others' paintings. Over time, fewer people came to see his art, and his pride turned to bitterness. One day, he met an old man who painted in the shadows. The old man's work wasn't flawless, but it was filled with heart and humility. People loved it. The young artist asked, "How do you find joy in your work?" The old man replied, "I paint not for their approval, but because I love the one who gave me this gift." Humility shifts our focus. It frees us from the exhausting pursuit of recognition and reminds us to serve the one who created us. It allows us to live with gratitude, joy, and peace. Pride is a mirage. It promises fulfillment but leaves us thirsty and lost. It divides us from others, blinds us to our need for God, and blocks the grace He freely offers. But humility is the oasis, the living water that quenches our deepest thirst. Let us reflect. Where is pride hiding in your life? Is it in your achievements, your relationships, or even your spiritual practices? Bring it to God. He is ready to strip away the illusions and lead you into the freedom of humility. For when we let go of pride, we find the true oasis, a life rooted in hope, peace, and the eternal joy of knowing God. Amen.